This is a Nostrand Avenue station in bed-stuy, and 8 years ago, almost to the day, two track workers walking down the tunnel a couple hundred feet from this platform made a horrific discovery. They found a plastic bag with body parts that turned out to be that of Rashawn Brazell, a 19-year-old young man from Brooklyn. He disappeared. He left his house. 3 days later, these track workers found the remains, and their screams echoed throughout this station. 8 years later, today, that case still goes unresolved. But now a documentary is being made. Actually, it's been in the making for several years, and it's going into post-production. And with a little hope, a little light, a little more publicity, this case will be solved, because someone out there, someone knows something, and they may have just the tip the police need to finally put this to rest.
I've been following this case ever since it happened in 2005. It was 4 years later, in 2009, that I was hosting a radio show for my university radio station, and it occurred to me that the case remained unsolved. So I used that as an opportunity to meet Rashawn's mom and finally ask all those questions that I had had from the very beginning. After that 1-hour radio interview, I basically felt like I was just scratching the surface of the story and that there was a lot more to do.
The only question I was able to get out was, why?
Shortly after Rashawn's body was discovered, there was a sort of shift in the tone of the media coverage when the media got wind of the fact that Rashawn was quote-unquote gay, although technically he was a bisexual young man, but you know, the media tended to focus in on his sexuality and all sorts of speculative theories about where he could have been going because he disappeared on Valentine's Day. Was he meeting someone on the internet? That became a big thing that came out in the story. It turned out that he wasn't meeting anyone on the internet, and that correction was never printed. So to this day, there continues to be that misconception that this is an internet hookup gone bad, when in fact that wasn't the case. And that's one of the things that the documentary is going to address, all the sort of disparities between the media's presentation and the facts. One of the things that I continue to puzzle over is, why would this murderer or this group of murderers decide to dispose of the body where they did in these subway tunnels? I can't be sure whether they expected it to be discovered and wanted it to be a public spectacle, or whether they expected that it would go completely unnoticed. It's a real kind of puzzling aspect of the story. I know, and Rashawn's family knows, and the police know that there are people who don't have direct involvement with the crime necessarily, but that they do know what happened. There have been sort of tips and hints left on internet blogs and mysterious phone calls and such. There are people who know what happened, and I'm hoping that after they see the documentary and really get to know who this young man was, how many people cared for him, and how many people still continue to grieve for him for this day, it'll I don't know, strike something in their conscience to make them finally come forth with the information that they've been sitting on all this time. I mean, this is like an unhealed sore, and it's time to close this one.